In this video, I'm going to go over some tips and tricks to answer the following questions. You're going to find a graphic that's going to ask you what portion of the grid is shaded in specific pattern. For example, what portion of the grid is shaded gray? If you recognize this grid, it's a hundreds grid, which means there are 100 pieces in this grid. And the particular question asked, what portion of the grid is shaded gray? So I would count each of those. It happens to be 5 by 6, which means there are 30 hundredths that are shaded gray. And that's what the fraction looks like. But that's just one of many solutions to this. Can you think of other fractions that can be simplified based on 30 hundredths? You're also going to be asked for the dotted pattern, a stripe pattern, and a black pattern. Here's another problem. Each small square on the grid represents 1/5. Every single square, regardless of color or pattern. As you can see, since each square is worth 1/5, and there are 5 squares in each row, 5 times 1/5 is 5/5, or 1. So you have 4 of those 5/5, and that equals a total amount of squares in that grid. In the next problem, you're going to be asked to analyze this shape. Each square on the grid represents 25 hundredths. What's the whole number of this grid? Same thing, same concept as the 1/5 grid, but this time we're working using decimals. So if each square, regardless of pattern, is 25 hundredths, then how much is the total grid? You're also going to be asked to name 3 fractions that are equivalent to a decimal. In this situation, it is 60 hundredths. If you look at the T-chart below, you'll see a column for decimals and a column for fractions. In the middle, that line represents an equivalent. So we're going to start with 60 hundredths. And when you hear the word 60 hundredths, you should automatically see in your mind that it's the numerator 60 over the denominator 100. And you can write that down. But then also when you say 60 hundredths and you say the hundredths word at the end, you know that the 0 in 60 has to fall in the hundredths place value. And it looks like 0.60, but in 6th grade we say 60 hundredths. The decimal 60 hundredths and the fraction 60 hundredths. You can further create 2 other equivalent fractions by reducing 60 hundredths by a common factor of 60 and 100. In this case, you can start with 10, which is equivalent to 6/10, and then you can further simplify 6/10 using a common factor of 2, and you can simplify 6/10 to 3/5. So you have 3 fractions, 60 hundredths, 6/10, and 3/5, that are equivalent to the decimal 60 hundredths. And finally, you're going to have to do the reverse. Name a decimal that's equivalent to a fraction. In this case, 3/15. Again, you'll see a T-chart with a column for decimals and a column for fractions, and the middle line represents equivalence. You start with a fraction 3/15. This is a little different because then you got to work the other way. You want to get to hundredths because every decimal is out of 100. So in this case, I look at 15 and I think about what common factors are there between 15 and 100. And the one I think of is 5. So I get to 5 from 15, which means I have to divide the denominator 15 by 3. And I have to do the same thing to the numerator, divide that by 3. I get 1/5. And already I see that I can get from 5 to 100 by multiplying 5 by 20 and 1 by 20. And that equals 20 hundredths. When you say 20 hundredths, you should be able to see the decimal 20 hundredths. If you say 20 hundredths, the 0 in 20 has to fall in the hundreds place. And it looks like this, 0.20. And there you have it.